just piecing up everything I could gain, just soaking in the knowledge, and just being a part of like the culture that is a part of like Lincoln
Yeah.
and Omaha.
Audio Jungle.
Welcome back to the Promised Land. It's your boy Dylan. We got a special guest today out of Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm excited to have him. It's your boy KT.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, man?
I'm pretty good, man. Happy to be here.
Cool. I'm glad you can make it. We're going to get right into it. I just want to hear about how you grew up, like how you started, what you grew up influenced on in music, how you got into music. Tell us your story, man.
Well, I was born and raised in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin. It's like about an hour and a half north of Chicago. I have had a music background my entire life, like way before I got into like being a lyricist and recording artist. I mean, just growing up in my mom's, house, like she would listen to like a lot of like oldies music and like 70s music, so I grew up on a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yep. Like I don't know, like Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Yeah.
Like, just Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
Music like that.
So a lot of different influences pulling from different directions.
Yeah.
So now tell us when you got started, like how this came to be, you becoming an artist, a lyricist. How did it all start? What was that feeling like? And when you decided to go for it?
So going to middle school, like I would like be in like junior choir, so I get offered to like sing solos in my junior choir. So I do that. I had a upbringing like in church, I went to a Lutheran grade school.
Yep.
So like that's how I sort of kind of got started with music in general,
Cool.
In high school, I was a part of like my high school marching band and concert band and drumline. Drumline was pretty competitive in my high school. So we would like travel around the city and even go to Chicago sometimes to do different competitions. So that honestly got me started with my music,
Yeah.
But then when I went to UNL and I moved to Lincoln, I never really thought to be a hip hop artist. I had started listening to hip hop music in high school, maybe even a little bit in middle school.
Yeah.
Always loved it. There were actually a lot of like aspiring rappers and artists in my high school.
Yeah.
Who did it. It's pretty popular in Milwaukee and
Yeah.
Upper Midwest. But when I came down here, I had never done it, but my friend, a really close friend of mine, he got me started with making, music. He was a hip hop artist himself. He had did it periodically throughout high school. We became really good friends. He wanted to get back into it, so he just naturally wanted me to do it with him.
Yeah.
So he had just started making beats on his PSP, in his dorm room,
Yeah.
trying to get back into it like on a low budget,
Yeah, for sure.
And then he like sort of kind of took me under his wing, like he would teach me the basics of writing lyrics, and like he would show me how to use a microphone and everything. Yep. And like he would compose, instrumentals for me, email them to me, and then I just sort of kind of got started, on my own, like outside of his help, of course, like I would just sort of kind of figure out how to write lyrics bar for bar, how to create different rhyme schemes, how to, change my tone of voice and like make it lower or make it more emphasized, you know, like things like that. Like that sort of kind of took me a while to get the hang of,
For sure.
I remember when I first recorded my first track, it was Mastermind in the Making in his dorm room. It took me a while to get the hang of it, like it was really monotone, like it just sort of kind of sounded like I was just reading it, like, didn't really have any emphasis or any passion. I mean, I felt like I had passion, but it didn't sound like I had passion, So,
yeah, for sure.
So, but that's how I got started, though.
Gotcha.
With a friend.
Yeah, and you said in high school you started like getting into rap and listening to hip hop. What were some of those influences that you were listening to throughout that time?
I would listen to, like in middle school, I would listen to like Nelly.
Yeah.
Then like, like that was back when like 50 Cent and
Yep.
like Eminem were starting to come up, you
Yeah.
know. So there were pretty big influences, like
Yeah.
just like G Unit and
For sure.
you know Aftermath and
Yep.
everything like that.
For sure.
Then like in high school, like the Trill fam, like Boosie, Webby,
Yep.
you know, all those guys. And then like Lil Wayne was really popular back then.
Yeah.
Gucci Man, Young Jeezy, like,
For sure.
Yeah, artists like that.
Yeah. And then, so moving from Wisconsin to Nebraska, and now doing music for the time you've done it now, and growing up, comparing it to when you were growing up, how do you see a difference or similarities through how people do music in these two areas, even though they're both Midwest? Is there a difference? Do you see a difference?
There's definitely a difference. I feel like in Milwaukee and Chicago, creativity is just really like easy to come by there.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just like everybody has it. It's a huge part of the culture
Gotcha.
up there. So it's probably more like profound into the actual culture in
Yeah.
Milwaukee and Chicago and like you
Gotcha.
know, the Twin Cities and Detroit and everything like that. But down here, I feel like it's less common.
Yeah.
You know, not to say that it's not here because we definitely
Yeah.
have a presence here. You
For
know,
sure.
in Nebraska and KC and surrounding areas.
Yeah.
But it's just more or less like you have to. It's more independent down here.
Yeah.
I feel like.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, especially back then, the music scene and stuff in this area, the Lincoln area, Nebraska, Kansas City, it was a lot less than what it is now. What do you think? Seeing that growth, being a part of that growth, making live music more of a commonplace thing around this area. How do you think that transition has been, and what do you think about it? I
think that the transition over the years is, you know, it's been good for me.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like I said, I wasn't really a hip hop artist back when I lived in Milwaukee at all.
Gotcha.
You know, like it just started when I moved to Lincoln,
Yep.
of all places. You know, so so that's where I got my start. Here, it's right here.
Yep.
You know, and I just did a lot of stuff on my own, and I did a lot of stuff with just surrounding artists and producers and engineers around here, and
Yeah.
saw what they were doing, you know, and
Yep.
I just sort of kind of did my own thing, but learned from them at the same time, you know, like I would learn from my, you know, engineer TJ Sadler. I would learn from up and coming artists like Ramon Brown or Screwface John.
Yep.
I would learn from I would get opportunities to open up for artists who come to the Bourbon, you know.
Yeah.
So I'd you know, get tits and tidbits from them, you
Yep.
know, just piecing up everything I could gain, just soaking in the knowledge, you know, and just being a part of the culture that is a part of Lincoln and,
Yeah.
and Omaha. You
And
know?
being a part of that is super important. Like, you feel probably that you have a little bit of a place in it, like getting
Yeah.
those opportunities to do that.
Definitely.
Speaking of that, getting into your career-wise, your first album came out in 2015. You have 4 albums out now and 6 singles out. How important was that first album to you? How good did that feel to put it out? What was the feeling like putting it together? What was that first album like for you?
Well, even before my first album, quote unquote, I came out with this collaborative EP. It's called The Domino Effect. I don't even think you can really find it online.
It wasn't on Spotify,
Yeah,
so
no, we never put it on Spotify.
gotcha.
But it was more like a mixtape, you know. Like back in the day, mixtapes were actually pretty popular.
They were.
You know? Yeah.
Yep.
Like we'd releasing them on, you know, Dat Piff and you know, Hot New Hip Hop
Yep.
and stuff like that. Yeah. But we don't really use that anymore.
Yep.
You know? But back in the day, when I released those projects, like The Domino Effect was a collaborative EP with I did that with Tsunami is his name. That's who I
Gotcha.
started with, and then Apollo is what
Yep.
the other guy went by.
Yep.
They're both really good friends of mine.
A lot of features you have with them.
Yeah, definitely. So we did that project together, and that felt really good just because we made like a tangible CD out of it, and that felt good to just give it to my friends or give it to my fraternity brothers or give it to anybody who I met on campus and just be like, hey, this is like my work, this is my project.
Yeah.
You know? So that felt really special to me. And then after that, I came out with my first solo mixtape called Crash Course. That was like right around the time I was graduating from UNL.
Yep.
That felt really good too, just because it was something of my own that I had. And all of it was original. That was my first project that, like, we didn't do any remixes on it. It was just all original instrumentals,
Yeah.
all original content, you know. And, you know, it's just me, just my projects, you know.
Yeah.
So, like, it was cool to release that. I felt really proud of it at the time. Obviously, I've come a long way since then. But it felt good, you know, in that moment, I'd say.
And there's constantly growth. You're always constantly trying to better yourself. You're competing against yourself constantly.
Yeah.
Throughout those albums that are on Spotify, you have some notable features, including Screwface John, King ISO, Jaden Keller, Curtis Beard, who we actually had on the podcast, Jay Influential, and Yada Man. Out of some of those people, working with them, getting a chance to have them on your projects, how has that felt like to you working with some of those people, especially like King ISO, who's made such a big name for himself now coming out of Nebraska.
Right.
Screwface John, moving away from Nebraska, come a long way from just being considered a YouTube rapper to actually making a name for himself. What was it like working with some of those people, and how did it feel to have some of those now big names on stuff that's your own?
It's felt great. It felt great. I love collaborating with artists who are local, you know, to the area, because they're pretty much in the same boat as I am, you know. I've always been a fan of collaborations in general. But especially like people around here, you know, I like to. I've always been a firm believer that, like, if you work with the people around you instead of trying to compete against them, it just makes it easier for everyone to
for
grow.
sure. And you probably have there's probably so much to learn from those different people, new perspectives, new ways they look at stuff. Has there been anything you've taken from some of those people that you've worked with that you're like, that's a hidden gem that I probably didn't think of before? Or
Yeah, without a doubt. Like, I've picked up a lot of information and a lot of knowledge from Screwface John.
Yeah.
Like, I've been working with him for years, you know, ever
awesome.
since probably like 2015 when I got started, you know, when I got officially started, you know. So, like, like we've done a lot of tours together in the past. Like, he would always invite me to open up for him, you know. He taught me a lot about the business side of it and like how to generate revenue like on the road, you know. Because like, I mean, I got to the point where in 2015, 2016, 2017, I knew how to make money off shows locally. But I just didn't really quite understand how to make money on the road. You know, but learning through him and getting advice from him, he really taught me a lot about, like, you know, how to go about doing it, you know, and how to reach out to people in said cities, you know, so they can like help you and basically work for you, so that way like you can generate revenue off them and they can get a cut too, and then everybody eats at the end of the day.
For sure.
So,
and that's very important. Speaking of performing, you've also had you've opened up for some notable people. Just in the last year, you've opened up for Jerry Robinson, Afro Man just recently, Whitney Payton, Chris Webby, and Echo. Talk about some of the shows you've done in the past or just in the last year, like some of the best ones you got to do, most exciting for you, and some of those people probably are idols. Afro Man's a legend to everybody. Everybody loves Afro Man. So like how cool were some of those experiences for you?
They were all really nice, man. I love performing. I love opening up for artists. That's something that'll never get old to me. Is performing, you know.
For sure.
And you know, I obviously love the artistry side of it too, like in the booth, you know, and recording and everything. But yeah, performing is just like a passion for me. You know. But as far as like just networking with other artists who I've, you know, gotten the opportunity to open up for, it's always cool just to like see how they do it and how they go about doing it, what they do during their set,
Yeah.
how they interact with fans, how they get the crowd involved. You know, you can really learn a lot. From
Oh,
just
for
picking
sure.
up
And networking
tips from
and
them.
yeah, networking and connections are so important. Even I've found that just in the last year, meeting people, hearing their stories, sharing your story with them, and it really builds a connection, and
Yeah.
you can really meet some really cool people. Getting into performing more specifically, how do you go about? Obviously, you get booked for a show, whatever. How do you go about putting together set lists for yourself? Walk me through that process and preparation for the show day.
Got you. I would say I really don't do too much different than I typically would.
Gotcha.
To be completely honest with you, I try not to overthink it. I try not to put too much pressure on myself. You know, I'll usually I rehearse when it's like about a week in advance. I'll start rehearsing.
Yep.
Maybe not every day, but typically like I'll try to
Yeah.
do at least a little bit every day. Then the first, a couple days beforehand, I'll rehearse more in depth.
Yeah.
Like I'll at least try to get a few run throughs in every day.
For sure.
Yeah, and then that way, by the time the show day comes, I don't really have to sweat like, oh, do I know my lyrics, or oh, do I know what I'm gonna do for this song, or do I know what order my songs are?
Yeah.
Anything like that, So I like coming to show as prepared as possible. It's
For
not
sure.
always that way.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
I'm sure.
definitely try my best to come prepared.
Yeah. And I'm sure no matter how many times you do it, how prepared you are, there's still a little bit of nerves come show day.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably always a little
doubt.
nerve wracking. Is there anything you do show day that just helps with that a little bit, calms the nerves a little bit?
Yeah, like it's definitely, for me at least, I try to get a good night's rest beforehand. I don't like to drink or smoke too much beforehand.
Yeah.
Like I like to a little bit,
Yep.
but not too much.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I'm the type where if I like to be loose on stage,
Yeah.
but I don't want to drink too much.
Yeah,
Too
yeah.
much,
Might
like,
cause a little problems,
yeah,
huh?
right. That's where I might just like, because it could counteract my nerves.
Yeah.
Like, I might like make it worse.
Yep.
So because I usually get nervous before pretty much every show a
Yeah.
little bit. It's not like, sometimes it's probably not even noticeable, but like inside my stomach will get tingly.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh crap. But like when I'm on stage though, and I get that first track over with, then that's usually when it goes away and
Yeah.
I feel comfortable. So
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Getting into the writing side of things, the writing production, what take me through your process in that? Is it kind of do you have like structured times in your day where you're like, okay, I'm gonna write, I got a few beats, or does it come to you and you're like, now I gotta sit down and stop what I'm doing and write? Take me through that process on the lyrical side of it.
I'd say, as far as being a lyricist and the lyrical side of it, I am very sporadic with my writing process, but at the same time, I do believe in structure too.
Yep.
So I guess I have a little bit of both.
Gotcha.
I'm pretty balanced with it. There'll be times where I'll just designate time out of my day to be like, all right, let me listen to this beat. Let me see what comes to mind. If anything comes to mind, I'll start writing. Or maybe I'll just scroll through my beat catalog and see if there's another beat that I want to work with, or sometimes I'll go hang out with the producer and be like, hey, let's make a beat tonight or something like that, just see if the creative juices come,
Yeah, for sure.
Other times though, like I'll just do it, like I'll be in the mood and it'll just come to me, I'll think of something crazy and I'll write it down, or like I'll just be sitting around, not even really wanting to work on music, but I'll just be like, oh, that's a clever concept. Let me write this down, or I think that sometimes too, like when I'm more consistently writing lyrics and when I'm more consistently listening to beats and all that stuff, it tends to come quicker and come easier for me. Whereas like if it had been weeks or months or maybe even a year since I've written anything, that it's going to be a little harder to get into.
Yep.
It might be a little bit more of a push to get the content
Yep.
out, So
When it comes to writing your lyrics, what do you find personally to just be the most important to yourself? Is it lyric content? Is it your flow? Is it your cadence? Is it changing flows? Is it what do you throughout your time making music?
Yeah.
What do you find to always be the most important to you and hold value to you when you write your lyrics?
yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's a combination of everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, like it's all important. Like the lyrics are important. You don't want to force anything. That's one thing that I've learned.
yeah,
Like if it's too challenging for you, or if you feel like you could say it, or if you feel like the comprehension of it could be a little better if you say it differently or cut out some words.
yeah,
You probably want to do it that way instead.
yeah,
But like one thing that I've really worked on and developed over time is just like the tonality of it all, you
Yeah.
know, because like sometimes it would be a struggle for me in the very beginning. Like I just rap like this and it wouldn't really sound like anything special, and I would just read like like
Yeah.
But if you do it like this and then, get fancy with it, or
Yeah.
like get more, animated
Yeah.
with it, then it's like it comes alive and people get a whole different perception of it when
yeah.
you say it.
So true.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really good point. One thing I noticed when listening to your projects and your albums, consistently for me, what stood out to me was your choruses. You have a great ability to write catchy choruses. Some would call them those radio songs that you just can't get out of your head. They're catchy. They're
Yeah.
got a good melody to them. Where'd you find that? Did it some come naturally, or is it something that you had to work on really hard? Or walk me through your chorus making process.
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah,
But,
of course.
I would say a lot of it just comes naturally.
Yeah.
I would honestly have to say, like, I'm pretty talented at making hooks and just
Yeah.
knowing what's catchy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just sort of kind of have like an inclination for that. I
Yeah.
feel like, but at the same time, I've picked up a lot from just listening to, some of my favorite artists and seeing what they do and seeing like, oh, like that's catchy.
Yeah.
Like I feel like a big part of it is repetition.
Yep.
Like you want to like repeat lines.
Yeah.
You also you don't want to be afraid to say something that you think that people might not like.
Yeah.
Like if you're feeling it and if it resonates with you,
Somebody
then
will.
somebody will
Yeah.
mess with it too. Yeah.
For
So,
sure. I want to come now to your most recent project, 2021, Different Breed. Walk me through putting that project together, what that project means to you.
It means a lot to me actually, and just because like I spent a good amount of time on that. I spent time like really thinking about the concepts of it too. Like I didn't really know where I wanted to go with it at first, and a lot of projects are like that for me. Like I'll just come out with a song or two, and then I'll have no idea where I'm going with the project.
Yeah.
But then like as soon as I get to like the third or fourth or fifth track, and then I've got like a handful of tracks, I sort of kind of get a gauge of where I want to go with the project, and how to formulate it and make it into something that's more cohesive.
Yeah.
So that's where Different Breed came in. Like I just came out with some catchy stuff. I think No Other Option was one of the first tracks I made for that. And then like Practice Makes Different was one too.
Yeah.
So I was just like, at the time, I actually went through a decent amount. Like during that time period, it was sort of kind of split up,
Yeah.
So like I started the project when I was living in Lincoln, and then I broke up with my ex. I moved to Omaha. Was in a whole new different environment, and I decided to make Different Breed like basically a chronological project where it's like I started with the pandemic and
Yep.
like the Black Lives Matter movement, and then me just like wanting to do better and take advantage of the period of 2020,
Yeah.
and then walking my fans and my audience through like the whole breakup and moving to a different city and
Yep.
getting fresh roots in Omaha,
Yep.
and then just like collaborating and working in Omaha and doing things out there.
Amazing,
So,
man. Yeah, that's really cool. Now, I'm going to wrap this up with a few different things. I want to get any goals you have for yourself? What are you thinking for yourself come the next year or so? What are some of your goals?
A lot of my goals are I want to push like singles out.
Yeah.
Like, I've come out with a lot of projects,
Yep.
over the past 10 years. I want to come out with more singles, like more like really big tracks,
Yeah.
that I can just like put this track out, maybe see how people feel about it, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Maybe if people like it a lot, maybe make a video for it. Maybe put it on, like different radio stations. Maybe push it harder.
Yep.
Like, release this single. If people are like, oh, it's all right. Okay, maybe just let that sizzle a little bit and then come out with something else
Yep.
down the road. So like, I think that's the route I'm gonna go. Like, Russ did that a
Yep.
lot.
Yep. And that's kind of the culture
Yeah.
we're moving towards. You see a lot less albums. It's a
Yeah.
lot harder to get fans to listen to a 20-track album front
Yeah,
to back.
it is.
They just want to hear one song and be able to add it to their playlist. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of artists are going that direction, and some choose to stay on the beaten path of the albums, which personally I love albums, but
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear about moving towards that single route.
Yeah.
Do you have a goal for yourself of how many singles you want to put out in the next year?
I've got a busy year in 2024 ahead of me with other endeavors that I'm
Yep.
pursuing. But I at least probably 4 to 7,
Yeah.
I would say would be a good.
And I feel like that's a good number, especially when that's a new approach that you're taking, something that you're not necessarily used to doing,
Yeah.
Any words of advice to somebody my age or your age that wants to get into music, has been doing music for a while and doesn't really know what to go? What's some of the most important things you've learned throughout your career?
I've learned quite a bit,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. So I could give a lot of
I
advice.
bet.
Yeah. I'd say my number one piece of advice is to just you have to do a lot of things on your own, and you have to create a lot of opportunities for yourself.
Yep.
Like opportunities aren't always going to come to you.
Yeah, you can't wait on anybody
it's,
else,
It's a very independent like grind, So a lot of things you just have to learn and do by yourself,
Yeah.
Other than that, I would say it really helps to have people who you collaborate with or work with, or people who are on your team, so to speak.
Yep.
Because it makes it easier.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but it's got to come from you. The root of it's got to come from you. I would say it's something that you really have to dedicate a lot of time to. You have to be willing to put in the work, put in the time. The music industry is one of those things where it's like if you sort of kind of treat it like a side gig or something that's not really like that important, you might not get that much out of it.
Yeah.
You really have to sort of kind of go full throttle with it if you really want to make a huge impact.
For sure.
Yeah, because that's when it pays off, when you really dive deep into it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then just like networking is huge.
Yep.
Huge
For
in the
sure.
music industry. Like
Yep.
it's all about connections and who you know. Like you can get a lot of opportunities that way. You
Yep.
know, so just continuing to go out to events, to shows, doing podcasts like you're doing.
Yep.
Just getting your name out there and like really putting yourself out. So to meet different types of people, different types of engineers. And that's another thing that I was getting at too, is like there's a lot of different avenues in the music industry. There's a
Yeah.
lot of different occupations that are composed of it. So don't restrict yourself. You could be a producer, you could be an engineer, you could be a marketing manager, you could be an agent, you could be a podcast host.
Yeah.
There's the opportunities
There
are
it
limitless.
is. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
Well, man, I appreciate your time. I'm going to give you a chance to plug any social medias or anything. Where can people find you, man?
sweet. Yeah. Like I said, my name, or like Dylan said,
Yeah.
my name is Ya Boi KT. All my social media is Ya Boi KT. Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. I don't currently have an Instagram right now. I'm working on getting another one. Unfortunately, my page got hacked. But yeah, YABOIKT is where you can find me.
Perfect. Well, man, I appreciate you stopping by. I appreciate you giving us your time, and I had a great time getting to know you and talk a little bit about stuff. It's been the Promised Land Podcast. Thanks for watching. See you next time.